Morning, guys. So today we've got the nuts and bolts problem. Let's jump into it. You run an online hardware store specializing in nuts, bolts, and washers. Your store has the following prices: bolts for 5 cents each, nuts for 3 cents each, washers for 1 cent each. Write a program that will ask the user the number of bolts, nuts, and washers they wish to purchase, and then calculates and prints the total. Save each into its own variable. As an added feature, we check the user's order. A correct order must have at least twice as many nuts as bolts and at least twice as many washers as bolts. Yeah. Otherwise, the order has an error. Use boolean variables to store whether or not a user's order has an error. For example, if it's 12 and it's above 0, yes. IFF, which is not Java code. I had a lot of people trying to use this, and it's just a logic simplification. It just stands for literally if and only if. So I mean that is the only possible way it happens, no other solution. If there has an order, it prints the error, whether they have too few nuts or washers, whatever the case may be. And if there's no error, you print order is okay. And so we've got 2 sample codes below. Bolts is 12, nuts is 8, washers is 21. Okay, nuts, remember they were supposed to have twice as many as bolts, so that should have been 24. They got the error too few nuts. Number of washers, again, twice as many, should have been 24, not quite there, so that errored. Total cost in cents, okay, so we're not converting to dollars, is $1.05. Okay, there's one example. Oh, that's what it was. Okay, so nuts, we have to have at least as many, washers, twice as many. Okay, so number of bolts, 32, number of nuts, 32. That's good because that's even. Number of washers, 356, well more than the twice we needed, so that order was okay. Now, if you'll notice, in both cases, I'm not stopping the sale, okay? I want to make that money. But what I am doing is I'm letting them know they may need to come back and place the order, or they may want to up the numbers. As early as this program is, we didn't give them that option, but, you know, something to consider. So I go back to the top. I've got my skeleton. I've got my user import because I am getting some information from the keyboard. I've got my scanner set up. So let's get my prompts prepared. Prompts. After that, this is where I need to do my Boolean tests. Okay, this is where I'm going to tell them whether or not they've got enough of each. And then the last thing I need for this is just my print statements. Okay. So prompting for all 3 items. Bolts, and you can sort it however you wish. And I'll just make it a very simple scan dot. There you go. So after bolts come nuts, and after nuts washers. There's all 3 of my items that I'm asking for. So I'm ready to move on to the tests. Now, it looks like we've got 2 tests we need to make, but there's actually a 3rd one. So the first one is basically exactly what it asks for. Enough nuts. And by default, we're going to say true. Reason being is because 1, it's another variable, so we need to give it a default value. And 2, we always want to assume the best of our clients, don't we? We're also going to have another one for enough washers. And we'll do the same thing here. So reason being why is it's always easier to check for a negative. Okay, so we set them true by default, and our test is going to determine whether or not they're false. Okay. So let's go with the first one, nuts. Now nuts had to be equal to. So if nuts is less than bolts, remember they can be equal to, they can be over, that's fine. We need to have at least that much. Then we change the variable to false. Notice I'm inside my curly brackets because I've got multiple lines going on. And I'll go ahead and print my warning statement or my error. And something like that. Oops, I forgot my quotes. There you go. Now, independent of that, okay, I don't want to put an else here because it's a completely different question and it's not dependent on the other one, is I want to do the same thing, but this time I want to check washers. Now, washers, we were asked to have at least twice as many. So that means inside this if test, I've got to do a little bit of extra math like that, okay? Now, washers, okay? And again, I'll update this to be washers. Okay, so it checks that to false, and warning, we've got too few. Good. Now, some people have put a third Boolean variable in here. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to write a test that doesn't require a spare one. I'm just going to link the two that we've already got. So if enough washers, no, that was technically the second, so that must be the one. If enough and enough washers. Okay, the only way this gets in is if both of those stayed true. If either one of these tripped, then that means we have an error. Okay, thanks to the announcements, I'm not sure how much of this I'll keep, how much I'll change it. All right, so we've got two tests right now to check to see if we've got enough of either of the two supplies, nuts and washers. I've got two independent if tests because the tests are not dependent on one or another. There's two different sets of items. And then this third one, this is if I made it all the way through and neither one of those triggered. I told you there'd be a reason why we set them to true at the beginning. This is it. So if I want to make sure only one thing is printed, that's why I'm using these. So enough nuts and enough washers. Okay, because it's an and statement, both of those have to be true. So the only way this is visible is if I missed both of those error messages. Okay, so if I do, very simple print statement they gave us, which was just order okay. All right. And yeah, I'll give myself a spacer line just in case. All right, so there's my entire Boolean test. I've got three independent if tests going on using two Boolean variables and then those values together for the third one. Now, I will say the last, well, no, that's good enough. Okay, and then the last but not least, now I've got my print statements. And that one's just going to be system.out.print. That's going to be total cost in cents. Because remember, we're not updating to dollars yet. Is, and this is where I just do all my math. Everything is encapsulated in parentheses because I want to make sure that's taken care of. Okay, so bolts is bolts times 5 cents each. Nuts times 3 cents each. And washers or by themselves. And I put an extra parenthesis around it so that I add all three of those up together, and that will print out my total. Okay, let's look at what they gave us. 12, 8, 21. And let's check our code. 12, 8, 21. Too few nuts, too few washers, but it is 105. Spacer line's nice. Could use another one right here at the warnings. Let's just put it right here. Just a spacer line. And since it worked there, let's check the last one. 32, 32, 356 equals 612. 32, 32, 356. Order okay. 612, good, but I'm missing a space. Right there. And that's it. Thank you very much.